Uh, Thank you for putting a recording on. Ray Lazar is responsible for taking care of our duplicate Patriot numbers specifically. Everyone who has a request to do that, it goes to Ray. And Ray is also a backup for Jamie and the work that Jamie does. Gary Hinson is administrator volunteer of our spatial projects, and Gary is new in that position the last few weeks. We'll be talking more about that, and he'll be talking about the spatial projects that we have for volunteers. And Mark Davis is administrator of Patriot Biographies. He's been doing that job for 2 or 3 months now. I want to say something about all of these guys. They are at work every day. In fact, they're even at work at night. I have seen emails exchanged at 1, 2, and 3 o'clock in the morning, or 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning. They work every day. They're involved in resolving problems that come in, setting a policy, and they're the key people that are helping to make this system happen. And so my hat's off to all of them and all of the work that they do. Of course, we do have a membership committee that consists of several other members who are part of the membership committee. Typically, they don't get involved with the day-to-day things, but they're here to help us with setting policy. Patriot Research System goals. These are under review, and what I have done is I have marked up the goals that were there for 21-22 to reflect where I would hope that we would be at the end or in July of 2023. So all of these goals are in support of our 250th anniversary. And number one there is to not increase anymore, but what we want to do is maintain the number of members who are linked to Patriots at 99%. We're at 99.7 today, and we want to continue to hold that. Of course, we have new members coming in to be linked, and so that number will probably never be at 100%. Number two is to, instead of increasing, to maintain the percentage of the lineages that are transcribed. And the old was 85%. We are up to 99% now. We want to maintain that at 99%. Again, there are new lineages coming in every day from new members, and we're also putting them in from those older records, which is in number 3 down there. I will make a point that Georgia and France are behind at getting the lineages transcribed from 1998 on through to today. Georgia's at 96.7%, and they're about 294 away from being 100%. So we're trying to encourage them to get that work done and applying manpower to do it. France is only at 46.4%. They need another 400 to achieve getting to that 100% goal. Part of the problem with France is unless you parlez-vous français and can read French names and those kinds of things, it's a little bit difficult working with those applications. So if any of you out there are French speaking, please get in touch with me. We would love to have you involved in those. The next number 3 is we were last year looking at adding 5,000 of the older applications. As you can see, the present number is at 33,000. And so we are wrapping up pretty rapidly on those older applications from 1889 all the way through 1984. And again, currently we have 33,000, but I would like to see us do 25,000 next year. We're trying to get all of these in by 2020, the end of 2025 for the 250 years. And so there's a total of about 100,000 out there. So that's about what we need to do every year. So there's a lot of work for volunteers to do out there coming in. We have 900, we're going to shoot to have 900 Patriot biographies in the PRS. We have 438 that have come in since this last January. So I don't think 900 is too bad of a stretch. And we need to increase the number of Patriot graves marked. I'll mention this later, but these are what I call the other volunteers, the guys who have boots on the grounds out there doing Patriot grave marking. And we're going to shoot for a total of 4,700 of those by next July. So as I say, these are under review. I'll be reviewing them with my staff and be putting them in my meeting minutes for the leadership conference. Hold on, guys, just a second. I have a dog who's quiet 99% of the day, and he saw another dog walking down the street. Okay, volunteer activity. Again, I appreciate all the work that all the volunteers do. You guys and gals are busy every day entering new member records. Those new member records come into the system on Friday when Eric loads them into the system. You're also busy entering the records that are coming in now, going back to 1889 into, whoops, I got that reversed. That's 1898, I think, into the system. Now, some of these are new Patriots that are coming in. That's what the system was all about. It's a Patriot system, Patriot Research System, and we're always looking for new Patriots to put in our research system, even though they don't have members. Submitting Patriot records and biography forms. There are a lot of guys out there who are working on those. We need to ramp those up so that we have more of those coming in. And doing special volunteer programs. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. Gary's going to talk about that. So let me see if I can move my slider down here. One of the things that I got involved with when I came on board about 6 weeks ago, attended a couple of meetings and everyone kept talking about problems. We finally talked about prioritizing problems. I'm not going to go into any detail here, but we have identified 15 different problem areas or 15 groups of problems. And those groups may contain anywhere from 1 to 13 items in each group. And we went through and we assigned priorities to those. So the 1, 2s, and 3s, number one priority, are the ones that we feel are the top priority for us to work on. And the number 3 priorities are the least important for us to work on. That doesn't mean from time to time we don't pick up a 3 and work on it, because it might be something that's easy to resolve. So we have gone through a rationalization of all of our problems, and we've got them ranked so that we've got a clear vision of where we want to be going with the problems that we handle on a day-to-day basis. You volunteers should be familiar with the volunteer dashboard. This is what it looks like. And I wanted to bring it up because we're always presenting and talking about the metrics and the progress that we're making. If you go into that volunteer dashboard and you click on the site search, you will find some diagrams in there that identify all of the things that we're working on, the percentage completions, and those kinds of things. I pulled up the one here that's the metrics in progress. Down the left-hand side, you see all of the groupings of the applications that we have. 1998 to current was the first one that we were working on, and of course that's the one that we're trying to get France and Georgia to get up to that 99% level. So once we achieve that, then we will have all of those in. Those will continue to increase because it is current, and that is the new members who are coming in will be added into that as we move along. The only other thing I'll point out is the 1889 to 1970 members. These are the ones that we are loading in now. These records some years ago were we allowed Ancestry.com to come in and to photograph all of those records. Many of you have been in Ancestry.com and you've seen those pop up from time to time. In order to get those records in, we were going to have to do one of two things, and that is to either to go in and to scan them back in again, or go to Ancestry and get them. And so we were able to get rolls of film from Ancestry, and Eric is involved in loading those films in. So I highlight that in yellow. That's where a lot of your applications are now coming from. Total down at the bottom, as you can see, we're at 99.7. We hope to hold that again as these new ones come in. It will keep us below 100%, but we want to try and maintain that. Okay, I'm going to be quiet for a little while now, and I'm going to turn it over to Mark Davis. Mark Davis is the administrator of our biographies, and he has a couple of slides here that he wants to talk about. If I can get them up. Okay, Mark, are you on?
I am, Steve. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Go right ahead.
All right. So so far this year has been a better than what was expected on new biographies. As you can see, we've had a total of 482 new biographies. The nice thing about that is 438 of them are unique, rather than adding a second biography to an existing Patriot. So pretty happy with that. I think we can do much better. And I'm hoping that we can get some energy behind this, especially in some of the states where we just aren't getting any currently. If you want to go to the next slide there, Steve. So just a real quick look at the top 10 states to submit biographies. You know, we obviously are getting a lot of momentum out of a handful of states, but we have a lot of improvements that we could be doing in some of our states, especially states with a lot of members like California. So hoping we can get everybody behind that. And if I could leave you with one thought, is this doesn't have to be complicated. If you go at this thinking that you're writing an obituary for your Patriot, you're talking about a few paragraphs covering the highlights of that individual's life. You start with the information we have, which is found on the Patriot record, and then you build from there. If you can find a will or a pension record, that's really what's going to give flesh to the information that we already have. And that's where you can really help us out on this. Please, when you do submit these, include your national number so you can get credit for these biographies. I try to look them up if I don't get them, but it's always saves me a little bit of time if you do include that information.
Okay, the only thing I will add to that is we appreciate all the work that is done on biographies, and it is important to have them because this is all about the Patriots and the Patriot information that we have. We are glorifying these Patriots, and even if we have a limited amount of information, their birth and death dates, where they were from, and a little bit about the family. I know here in Ohio, we have over, I think it's 6,000 who are buried here in the state of Ohio, many of them coming from the east into Ohio in the early 1800s. And those guys got involved in the community and they were active in the community. They became councilmen and mayors and what have you in the counties and the townships in Ohio. So it's important that we capture a little bit about the history of these guys. Okay, I'm going to go on now to volunteer special projects, and Gary Hinson is the administrator of that. These special projects have come about as a result of problems that have been reported in the database and the recording of the database. They've come about as a result of changes in application policy. As we go back in time, we are finding out that applications were done a little bit differently, and there's a lot of data that's missing in them. And the problem is how do we solve these problems in order to have a good system? We also have some not so good volunteer instructions. And I won't go into any details about that, but some of the early instructions that we had maybe weren't as robust as they should have been in providing instructions. And that's caused us to have the entry of some bad information. And we do have volunteers who don't follow even the instructions that are there that are good. So these are all causing problems in the database that have to be resolved. And Jamie Callender has been doing search and find on these things for quite some time. I think it frustrates him greatly to have to find these things, but he is a data miner. And once he finds them, he writes some code, or with Eric, he writes some code, and he goes out and he can make a list of all the occurrences of these things. And so Gary Hinson is now the administrator working with Jamie, and they're working together to put together these projects so that we can go out and clean up that database. So Gary, if you got your microphone on, I've got your slide up here. It's a little bit different than what you gave to me, but all the stuff is there.
Thank you very much, Steve. We are a fairly new committee. We've only been working at this in just a little over 2 weeks. We have recruited the slides. Now it says 7 volunteers. It was 6 2 days ago. Now it's 7. And we're working on several projects. As you can say, we're working on finding missing children in the Patriot Record System, adding DAR links in those systems. In the applications, we're actually have applications where people did not enter son or daughter from one relationship to the other. And I find that hard that we missed those when we were entering them or reviewing them. We're also working on the Patriot date updates and Patriot type of application updates with some new volunteers that are helping along those lines. Collectively, we're probably in the first category. We're 24% done. Patriot DAR records were 30%. The sons daughters relationships were 40% along. We're another 40% along in updating the missing Patriot dates, and another 12% in the type. Now, some of those application records lists that Eric and Jamie develop are anywhere from a few hundred up to 6,000 to 7,000 entries. So it takes a lot of line items and a lot of time. I want to thank the guys that have joined the committee with me for what they're doing. They're doing a phenomenal job, and they're banging away at this. And hopefully in a short period of time, we can say those few projects on the top of the list are done. As of today, Jamie's given me another 8 lists. I'll be reviewing those and starting to put together some process statements for those and moving those lists farther down the line as we go along. Thank you, Steve.
Okay, thank you, Gary. And I think, as you can see from this, the number of applications in some of these categories that are fairly large that we're going back and having to correct. So I'm not going to say that we don't appreciate our volunteers. We do appreciate our volunteers. We would not be where we're at today if it weren't for you volunteers out there pounding these applications in and Patriot information in. But we ask that you do, please be careful, please double check your work. And if you're a reviewer publisher, make sure that you're also doing a double review on these so that we don't have to continue to go back and repair these. Okay, the last person with a presentation is Jamie Callender. Jamie has put together, and we reviewed it the last time, the do's and the don'ts of updating Patriot records. And he's updated a little bit of what he presented the last time, and we want to present it again. We want to get this to all of you volunteers I ask in the email that I sent out that you please, if you weren't attending the meeting, at least review the documentation and kind of recalibrate yourself on some of those things that are important to get correct in the database. And so with that, Jamie, I will turn it over to you. And there's the first slide.
Okay, thanks, Steve. So up front, I just want to say, I want to reiterate what Steve just said. Thank you, volunteers. We could not do this without you. And there was us few admins, obviously can't run this project. And it'd be my observation since the last time I presented this, that you're doing a much better job. So thank you for paying attention, for reading, for internalizing it and applying it. That's really greatly appreciated. So this is more of a foot stomper for just some things, and it's really stuff that I see. And probably the first one, I get asked a lot about, has that been proven? Has that been verified? And I want to remind everybody, and think about what our name is, the Patriot Research System. It's not the Patriot Genealogical System. And so we don't deal directly with the proof side. And you got to keep that in mind when you're doing this. We want to be able to point researchers, we want to point compatriots, we want to point the general public who comes in and says, I'm wondering about something. We want to give them somewhere to go look. So that's what we're focusing on. So keep that in mind as I go through this, please. So, when you do the Patriot records, it's really a multi-step process. And I'd say that's probably the one place we're still sort of falling down. In fact, I just published a record before this meeting tonight, and it was submitted and it looked good overall. But when I got down to the sources, there was only one of those generic source things in there that says this came from some database way long ago. And I said, let me check. So I clicked on the Patriot and there was a record copy attached. So I opened the record copy and there were half a dozen sources in it that whoever had done that. And I don't know whether you don't think about it, whether you don't think that's really what you're supposed to be doing. So again, I just want to foot stomp that, especially the record copies. And the other place you get sources is out of the DAR GRS. So please, when you open a Patriot record, unless you're on one of Gary's special committees where you're just doing a very specific task, but when you're going in and attaching and putting in lineages and doing all that, please check those and please update it. It's really important, again, to get back to providing everyone else who won't have access to those record copies directly with the information that's on them, giving them places to go look for things is what we're trying to do. So that's for record copies. I gave you a list of things. I'm not going to read them to you, but that's all the stuff you take out of record copies. With the DAR GRS, probably you're going to get name variations. That's a big thing. And we'll talk about what you do with those in a little bit. And you're going to get service and sources. So those will be the big things you're going to get out of there. And then, yes, please check Find a Grave. What you're going to find today in Find a Grave, they're making a push to do a lot more GPS. So you're going to start finding graves that actually have GPS associated with them. If you do, it would be great to put that GPS into the PRS graves GPS location. What I'm going to ask you to not do, and yesterday I did about 20 records. 3 of the 20 had cemetery GPS and the grave GPS. So I'm going to talk more specifically in a little bit, so I won't say anything about that. And a lot of questions have come up over the last few months about how do we, when we put information from other sources, what do we do with it? So I'm going to make a suggestion to you that for SAR sources, you do not need to put SAR sites, NSSAR sites, or any of that, please. But if you pull it out of Find a Grave, like something about the grave, the cemetery, children, whatever, please start it with per Find a Grave or something like that. In other words, give them credit. And same thing for the DAR GRS. And kind of the standard would be NSDAR sites. And then put in, like if you're putting in sources, NSDAR sites, and then bullet kind of things. Okay? I just want to leave you with a thought there that, it's kind of back to that animal farm thing, where all pigs are good, Just some are better than others, and all data are good, folks. Just some data are better than others. And we don't want to put wrong data in, but let's include data, please. So I'm just going to real quickly step through. This is the do's and don'ts part. You should have in theory all gotten this. So I'm not going to go into grave details here. But what we see, and there's a lot of confusion over the slashes, and I apologize for that. Some of this you can blame on Eric Kruger. It's his fault. He built search features in that if we put spaces between slashes in names, it's going to screw up his search feature. So basically, the ROE there is anything that's searched. So if you go back to that Patriot search feature, anything in there that's search, you don't want to have spaces between the slashes. So that's first names, last names. Basically, and the state of service, you know, what you're looking at here. Everything else, if you're using slashes, you want spaces between them. So I kind of, I'm not going to read this all to you. We've been through it kind of in detail before. And I'd say, if you have any questions, please reach out to me. I'd be happy to clarify, be happy to step you through it. I'll send you screen captures. Okay, so in other words, if this doesn't make sense to you, then reach out and let's try and get it solved. A change from last time that you see on this one is, for years I've been using, when I don't know a first name, last name, or a spouse in general, I was using dash, dash, dash. And we've come to a consensus that that's not the right answer. So I'll admit my fault here. We're now using XX. Okay, so that's what you see on here. Sally XX or XX Hootman. Or if you don't know the name of the spouse, it would be XX space XX. Okay, so that's the standard now. If I see them, I'll fix them, but you can help me out by doing that, pretty please. Just got a question early today about spouses and children. So you see it here. If there's multiple spouses and you have some indication of where those children go to which spouse, this is how you should do it. It says Sarah, Robert, and Thomas belong to spouse 1, and Mercy belongs to spouse 2, and either we don't know or there were no children for spouse 3. Okay, so I think it's pretty straightforward. Same numbering you used for the spouses. If you know it, use the same numbering for the children. If you don't know it, then don't put any numbers. And I would suggest, if you know one child belongs to one spouse and have no clue on the rest, put the ones you don't know first, and then put a number with the child or children that belong to the spouse you know. And that's the best we can do for right now.
Amy, can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
This is John Kraft from Washington State. Regarding, you said to put XX when the name isn't known. In a case where, for example, there's nothing for the Patriot spouse, no name, no date, no location, do you still want X's in there, or you want it left blank?
Blank.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah,
Thank you.
There's no reason to tell someone you don't know what you don't know, because it's
Yeah,
obvious.
I agree. I've always left it blank. I just wanted to confirm that.
And then, I mentioned a little about crediting others. So you see down in the service description, NSDAR cites juror. That would be the way to do it. And please, this is service description. Don't put patriotic service and then go what the patriotic service is. There's no reason to say civil service : and what the civil service is. It just break them up, number them. So if you have, like this one, you have military service, you have patriotic service, and civil service, you have 3 numbers. Okay, common sense, I think. Next slide, please. So now we're into the cemetery, and I still find, and I don't know whether you're just missing the buttons. So obviously the first thing you'd put in is the, oh wow, these didn't line up, did they? Well, I apologize. I screwed that one up. So ignore where they are all the time. What it is we have a new feature here. So I want to point that out. You see cemetery GPS. Now this says NANA because I had to use a blank form, so it wasn't filled in. But when you go into edit mode now, if the cemetery has GPS, you're going to see numbers there. And in just a second, I'll show you how you do it. But I would ask you to look. So if, like this case, there are numbers in the grave GPS, please make sure they're not identical to the cemetery GPS. You used to have to go looking for it. It's right there now. And I'll give you a hint on how you compare to decide, because they're never going to, well, never, almost never, they're going to be exactly the same, because Find a Grave now rounds to 5 digits, and most times you have 6 or 8, when you're collecting it yourself. So you got to do a little rounding, but I'll show you that in a sec. Anyway, when you're putting in a Patriot, couple of things for cemetery, for Find a Grave, don't hand type it, please. Copy and paste. That way it'll be accurate. So you put the grave memorial in first, and then you put the cemetery ID, and then you click the Get Cemetery Info from Find a Grave button. And the one right above it, the SAR Cemetery ID, should fill in. Now, most of you don't have cemetery add edit capability. So if it doesn't fill in, that's okay. The publisher who gets it will do it. But if you don't push the button, you never know. And if it's already there, sometimes some of the information on the cemetery has changed. So this is one of those buttons that you should just push as you go by. Okay? You will find some portion of the time it'll make an update on there because something's changed in the cemetery information. So please check that grave GPS is not cemetery GPS. And I went through in a lot of detail last time, I think, about why we're interested in that. It's a mapping thing and a feature that's growing. And then in cemetery comments, the other thing I find is if you don't find the Patriot in Find a Grave, please annotate that. You can see no entry found in Find a Grave. And I always put month and year. That's just so, and you don't need to add to that. If you check it now in August 2022, you don't need to add that after February 2021. Just delete February 2021 and put in August 2022. In other words, it says we know when it was checked. So if we're going to check those yearly or every 2 years, we'll have some hint of when they should be checked again. When you put that entry in, please put unknown in the cemetery name. Okay, so if you don't find them and you don't have a hint what the cemetery is, put unknown. What you can see here is this is one where usually historical data, someone said it was Smith's farm. There was something there. I didn't find him in Find a Grave. I don't find Smith's farm in Find a Grave cemeteries. So I keep the information that it was Smith's farm. I would put unknown up above. Okay. And there are some of you who like to embed links to things. Please don't do that. In other words, what they're embedding is links to usually the grave photo in Find a Grave. Either go to the cemetery and take your own photo, or request from the Find a Grave contributor permission to use their photo, and then we'll attach it to the record. In other words, it goes into the PRS, it's on our server and we have it. It doesn't go anywhere, the link doesn't go away. But don't embed links, please. If you do, they will disappear because I will delete them. Okay, next slide, please.
Jamie, this is Gary Green.
Yeah, Gary.
Can you go back to slide 1 there, Steve?
Slide 1.
No, just up one
Just
slide.
back 1.
No, up one slide. No, the down
Down
one,
one.
Steve. The graves.
Slide 21.
There you go.
Okay. Jamie, what I found was the cemetery GPS coordinates will not populate unless you click on the SAR cemetery ID. Just by clicking on Find a Grave ID, gives you most of the data, but it doesn't populate the GPS. So maybe we can get Eric to change it so we just hit one button if possible.
Okay. I will make a note of that. Thank you, Gary. I guess I knew that. So what Gary's saying is you can push the top button, the one by SAR cemetery ID, and that then pulls the information from the PRS cemetery record, which includes the GPS, which then populates the GPS. It also populates everything else there to match what is in the cemetery record in the PRS. But okay, I will cemetery. Okay, down one, yeah, there we go. Okay, so what's Jamie talking about? So this is what it would look like. And you're saying, are these two identical? Well, first, let's talk about at 4 digits, if you're 4 significant, okay, 4 digits, you're at 10 meters of accuracy. That's 30 feet. So within a large cemetery, if you match at 4, you're probably still a match, but you could have, you could have a grave. At 5 digits, it's an order of magnitude. You're now at 1 meter, which is 3 feet. So if you match at 5 digits, you can pretty well be assured it's a match. If you match at 6, it's 0.1 meter. Okay. So if we look at these, if we count digits, so you look at the cemetery above and you go 815262. If you look at what's put in the grave GPS, 8152618, that would round to 62. You match at 6 digits. Okay. And then if you look at the lawn, 018318, 0183182, again, it matches at 6 digits. They are identical within inches, better than your cell phone would get you the accuracy of the numbers. Okay, so what you're asked to do, please, is when you see this, you remove what is in the grave GPS in the red box here. Highlight, delete, and you move on. Okay. What it says is someone took the cemetery GPS coordinates and put them there, is what they did. There's my email address for any that don't know how to email me. So please feel free anytime, send me an email. Next slide. Or am I all done?
Well,
We didn't get the last one in.
You sent me 5 and I only have 4 here. So I cut you off one, Jamie. And I don't know what was in that. Do you know
Okay.
what was in that?
Oh yeah, I'll talk to it. So it's just the last section. So this is directions to cemetery. And I guess I should say, up until Eric put that feature in we're looking at right now, where you see the cemetery GPS, the ROE was, if you looked them up and they weren't the same, you would then manually copy paste out of Find a Grave that cemetery GPS into the directions field. So we don't need to do that anymore. We're not going back and doing, reopening all those records where people put them. But if you open one and you see cemetery GPS in directions, please feel free to delete it. In other words, not necessary anymore. The sources I already talked about. And so I kind of gave you a hint. It's interesting. I've got a couple of volunteers who will do exactly this when there's only one record there. So you see under Pennsylvania Archives. So what it says is the record copy had the first one, and looking in DAR GRS, they had the 5th series. So this is how I would recommend you do it. It just makes the most sense to me. I'm also going to ask that you please don't duplicate things, okay? In other words, we don't need to cite DAR GRS saying the exact same thing that was in the SAR record copy. It just makes no sense. So I would start with the record copy and then fill in things that are missing in the record copy that are unique in DAR GRS. Don't just duplicate them, please. And this is if you don't find a match in the DAR, GRS, in additional information is where you would put that no DAR record located, again, month, year kind of thing. So that's what I had. Steve, back to you.
Okay, very good. I, for some reason, can't get the bottom up here to see if we have any questions. Jamie, were you following those? Can you pull that up at the bottom of your screen and see if there were any questions? There's got to be questions. I see we have 26 with us. If you've got a question, put your hand up.
Okay. Well, the first one was Ray Castle asked, is that decimal places or significant figures? And I call them decimal places. I guess you could call them significant figures. In other words, it's the number of numbers after the decimal place, if that answers the question. Are there concerns with the age of the record copies? Well, of course there is. You know, I mean, so that's kind of one of those, you got to use good sense. It's still information. Obviously, it's dated information. And from a proof perspective, and I want to caution you again, we're not doing genealogy here, folks. Okay. In other words, if you're going to take a application approved in the 1940s and say, I'm going to submit on that and do nothing else, well, you're probably going to be sadly, you know, the outcome will not be what you expected, I expect. That doesn't mean there is no valuable information on that record copy. There most likely could be very valuable information, as in they'll point you to some sources, or point you to a place where then you'll find other things. So yeah, of course, a record copy from 40 years ago is less valuable than one from 5 years ago as a proof source. But from the PRS perspective, all data are good. Chapter. And I think that's about it, Steve. So back to you.
Okay. I was looking here. I see a whole bunch on here on mine.
Those have kind of been answered as we've been going along, Steve, I think.
Yeah, probably so.
If we wanted to
How
help
do
us,
Here's one on bios. Says, how do we get a work list of patriots missing bios or to any known patriots who are missing records in PRS? So let's take the first part first. A work list of patriots missing bios. There's going to be a whole bunch of them. I mean, they're in the tens of thousands, I would suspect, because there's a big disconnect between how many biographies that we have and how many patriots we have in the system. But I'll let you answer that, Jamie. Is there a way to generate that kind of a list?
Well, yeah, my answer to that one was, you know, give me a specific and I can generate you a list.
Okay.
In other words, I can generate you a list of all of the patriots that are associated with active members of your chapter. How many are missing biographies? Sure, we could do that.
Hey, Jamie, this is Mark.
Yes.
Hey, I've actually had Eric run that list for me a few times for my state. And so I think he's probably got a canned report in there that he could share.
Yeah, I did a quick look. I didn't see it, but it may be hiding somewhere. And at some point, we're going to have a different, Eric's working on it right now. He and I have been talking over the last couple of months about building a better reports page. In other words, rather than having that list and trying to sort through it, you're going to see something new coming in the not too distant future. that I hope is more helpful to you being able to get at the information you're looking for quicker. But you're right, Mark, he could build something fairly easily.
I've got a quick question while we're on the biographies, and Mark may be the best answer, I don't know. Got people submitting biographies to me for my chapter. I'm out of Texas. I have not been getting any basic updates. Been doing this for quite a while now, but so I don't know if anything's changed. Are we filling out forms now? Can we just do a copy and paste into the system? What's the best way that you would prefer it?
You can send those if you're a volunteer, which you are. You can certainly just paste those right in there and they'll come to me
Okay,
automatically to approve. And at that point, then I'll read through them just to verify the grammar and everything.
sure.
You can send the forms. Those go to Steve or Jamie first usually, and then migrate to me. Or you can mail them to the email address that's on the submittal page.
Okay,
All three of those work. All three of them are great. I have no preference one way or the other.
Yeah, the recommendation would be to just enter it if the Patriot's in the PRS.
sure.
And go the form route if the Patriot's not in the PRS and you don't have the permissions to create a new Patriot. So.
Okay. Yeah, no, and I've been past registrar and different things. So I realize we're not going to try to put a book in there. It's just going to be a short biography of paragraph or two, 10, 15, 20 sentences, something along this line, just to get it into the system. So if just pasting it in there is good, then I'm good with that.
Yeah, and if you can include a few sources outside of what's already on the Patriot record, that might help, especially if you pull from like a will. Drop those down, or if you find sources for Patriot information that's not listed, throw those in there.
Okay, appreciate
That's
it. All
helpful.
you guys are doing a fantastic job. Appreciate all y'all do.
Thanks, Dave.
I had one here that, and I think we probably answered it, who can do or submit a bio if it's not been obvious. Anybody can submit a bio. Example, maybe your wife's in DAR and she's got a Patriot ancestor and that Patriot ancestor is not in our system. By all means, fill out a Patriot record and bio form, gather the information, and we'll put that Patriot in our system, even though there's no male member in the system. So we'd be happy to do that. If she's got a bio, we'd be happy to put her bio in there. So anybody who wants to write a bio can write the bio and submit it. We encourage that to be done. Chapter.
Yeah, we have a question about somebody wants to contact Gary Jensen about special projects. So Gary, do you want to give out your email?
Gary Jensen, are you there?
You're mute, Gary.
Yes, it's Gary, Gary at JENSENMYWAY.com.
Okay, I think we've probably covered everything. If not, and you want to send us an email, maybe you had a question that'll come up later, be sure and send an email through the system.
Hey, Steve, I've got a question.
Sure.
So I noticed today that there was some upload activity of not just biography, but other additional records on a particular Patriot. I don't remember the Patriot's name offhand, but it had like a land deed and all these other kinds of deeds. What are we planning to do with those?
Yeah, that was uploaded yesterday. That was probably me. That came in with a graves and biography report. It was the quote unquote evidence that was submitted with it. So what are we planning on doing with it? I don't know. What are you planning on doing with any of that stuff, Jim? I just put it there as a place to put it. So we have the supporting documentation that came with the form that's also in that file. And good question.
Yeah, I mean, I can see it's all good information. Don't get me wrong. To date, for the, let's call it the supporting documents that we've had for biographies or graves, we've basically had the grave report, but that's it. So I guess the next question is, do we plan to also include these as some of those supporting documents or not? I mean, granted, it's only visible to the volunteers, but it's still a question that we probably should be asking ourselves. And what do we need to do in that case if we've got it in there?
Okay, well, stand by to stand by. In other words, this was one where the Patriot was not in the PRS, so I guess they felt the need to justify. So I sort of scanned over it and said, okie dokie, it shows, I think there were pay records in there too. It shows that this person was a Patriot, meets that part. And so I put them in, I created a new record for them. Well, in this case, I used a duplicate record, but, created them as a new entry. And I said, from my perspective, put the paperwork there as the supporting justification, but happy to do something else, happy to put them in file share or whatever. But yeah, let's continue that discussion offline. That's a reasonable one.
Steve and everyone, this is Woody Wilson with the Florist Society. I've had my hand up. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I've had a question, some discussion that I wanted to do on order records. I've been working on order records in Florist Society. Jamie has mentored me and coached me, and I've appreciated his support and getting me on track with some of the things that I've been doing over the last several months. But one of the things that I found is as I do older records, especially those from the late 60s and early 70s, having been a registrar and I worked on applications and I've had over 60 or 70 approved over the last number of years, I found that the authenticity or the authentication of the older records is not the same as we use in modern genealogical standards. And I've also found dates of birth, places of birth, places of death, places, years of death, dates of death for patriots are different from what's in the Patriots biography that we're supposed to update. So I then look at how many additional applications have been approved against that Patriot. And if I find some that are more modern, more current, I tend not to change those dates in the Patriots indexing system, but I make a note of it as other information in older RCs used a different place or date of birth for this Patriot. I'm not sure exactly what I'm supposed to do, I think, but I find as a former registrar that it's typically not good to mislead people and use older applications that were not authenticated in the same way as modern applications that actually change Patriot records. And I'm wondering if there's some conversation about that as to what the right thing to do is.
Okay, well, let me, I don't know, I had a hard time hearing, but since I had dealt with him, I remember what the issue is. So his issue is he's pulling up one of these older applications. He's asking, should he update the Patriot record based on that? Basically change information that's currently there. And my answer to him was a couple-fold. First, if there is no information in a field, then absolutely put what was there from that older application. If you have something in there and there are newer record copies attached, then I would suggest no, you probably go with the most recent record copy for the data we show, but it would probably be appropriate to document that. And additional information would be where I'd recommend and say, per record copy, whatever it is, boom, boom, date of birth was this, place of birth, place of death, whatever it is that's different, just document it. It shows that at some point, someone had some different information. Doesn't make it wrong. I think we've discovered over time that genealogy doesn't necessarily go back and review all of the old information. They just look at what was submitted seemingly and say, was this justified or not? If it is, then they say, check, 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 or cross out, or, you know, whatever they end up doing. So keep all the info, you know, all data are good, just some are better than others. And in this case, the most recent record copy probably should take precedent. That just makes sense. But keep the other information, just document it. And the place to do that most likely would be down in additional information. And I'm pretty sure that's what I told Woody, but anyway.
It is, and that's what I've been doing, and I just thought it would be good to have a discussion for everyone about that. As we get into these older applications, it becomes more complicated when you look, especially when you look at handwritten and old typewritten applications, actually even to discern what they're wrote. And we're trying to make the correct entries without adulterating the correct information in the Patriot's biography. So I just thought it might be good, worth a discussion to have everybody sensitive to the fact that not all of these older applications were approved to the same level that the newer applications are. So thank you, Jamie.
Okay, if we would at this point in time, I'm going to try and ride through my slides here. We're into a little bit more than an hour. So I would like to call the meeting to a close. Again, if you have if you have anything that you would like to have answered, you can send it in to us. We get questions every day, and sometimes we don't know the answers right away, and sometimes we do. And so we'll be happy to assist you in whatever way we can. So with that, I'm going to call the meeting to a close. I thank everyone again for attending this evening. We really appreciate it. And would like to close with our SAR recessional, which you should see in front of you. Until we meet again, let us remember our obligations to our forefathers who gave us our
Constitution,
the Bill of Rights, and independent Supreme Court, and a nation of free men. Okay, thank you, gentlemen, and we'll look forward to seeing you again. Take care and have a safe rest of the summer.